The wind in Nyariko Valley had always been strange. It didn't howl or roar like the winds of other places, it spoke. It spoke in whispers that called through the banana leaves, that hissed between the stalks of maize, and some swore it even spoke names. Old names. Forgotten names. And sometimes, your own. Elders dismissed it as superstition, a trick of night air and lonely hearts. But the children, the ones who had felt the breath of that wind on the back of their necks when no one stood behind them, they knew better. It began one season when the valley lay under a moon that was neither bright nor dark, just a thin, tired green in the sky. The cattle returned from pasture trembling, their ears twitching at sounds no one else could hear. Goats refused to drink from the stream at night. And mothers began burning their cooking fires longer, afraid of what the darkness might do without light to restrain it. At the center of this uneasy night stood the house at the farthest edge of the village, the one that had no history, yet had always been there. Eldenby remembered clearly, when he was a boy, that land had been nothing but elephant grass swaying under the sun and the skeleton of an old fig tree. Then one morning, the hut stood there as if the night had laid it down like an egg, small, weathered, with a thatched roof sagging low over the doorway like a hood hiding its eyes. No one saw who built it. No one saw anyone live there. Yet, on certain moonlit nights, villagers swore they saw a shadow inside, slow-moving, patient, as if pacing out a lifetime. People learned to ignore it. In villages like Nyariko, you kept your head down and your questions locked away. Curiosity, they said, was a river that carried you only one way, toward the mouth of something that would swallow you whole. Akin was 8, with hair like coiled ink threads and a laugh quick as sparrow wings. She was last seen plucking wildflowers near the grazing path one late afternoon. When her mother realized she was missing, her cry ripped through the valley, waking even the dead in their graves. Lanterns flared in the dark, and the men fanned out with spears and machetes. The forest was scoured, the riverbanks combed, but the only trace they found was her beaded anklet, lying in the wet soil, just a few paces from the path that led to the hut. The elders, faces grim under the flickering torchlight, declared the matter for ritual cleansing. No one would approach the hut until the spirits were appeased. But grief does not listen to reason. Otieno, Akin's older brother, was known for his stubbornness, the kind that refuses to wait for morning. That same night, before the cock crowed, he took a torch, clenched his jaw, and walked into the dark toward the forbidden house. The villagers heard him go. No one stopped him. Perhaps they feared that to touch him would make his fate theirs. He returned at dawn. Or at least, something wearing his face did. His skin had the pallor of wood ash. His eyes, once bright with restless fire, now stared ahead without focus, unblinking. His clothes dripped with rainwater and a smell of earth so fresh, so raw, it was as though he had been buried and dug up again. When his mother flung her arms around him, he did not embrace her. He simply said, in a voice that trembled like leaves, "She's not alone in there." After that, Otieno never spoke again. He wasted away within weeks, his gaze fixed on something far beyond the walls of their home, until one night he lay still and cold, smelling faintly of damp soil. The whispers began. After Otieno's return, the wind changed. It no longer carried only old names. Now, it spoke the names of the living, sharp, deliberate, clear enough that you could almost tell from which direction they came. An old woman weaving baskets alone at dusk had her name. A hunter gutting a hare under the acacia tree had his name. A child splashing in the shallows of the stream had hers. The voices were never loud. They were soft, gentle even. Like a mother calling you in for supper. Like an old friend inviting you home. And those who followed did not come back. Nyariko was the kind of woman who wore her defiance openly. Small and wiry, her hair streaked with the white of storms, she had treated fevers, birthed children, and chased off more than one wandering spirit in her day. She claimed she had heard of such a hut before, her grandmother spoke of it in hushed tones. A doorway, the old woman had said. Not to heaven. Not to hell. A doorway to where the earth keeps what it does not wish to return. On a night when the moon was swollen and red as fresh blood, Nyariko prepared herself. She smeared her face with ash, tied rattling gourds to her waist, and took her calabash of bitter herbs. She walked toward the hut alone, the villagers following at a fearful distance. They saw the door open. Not with a creak, but with a sound like the earth exhaling. Nyariko stepped inside. They did not see her come out. But they did hear her voice, faint and strained, slipping out from the hut's dark mouth. Don't open the door. Don't ever open the door. The next morning, the hut was gone. The ground where it had stood was unbroken, smooth, and green, as if it had never been there. Life crept back into Nyariko Valley. Children were born. Fields were planted. The story of the hut faded, told only as a fireside warning for stubborn children. But there were things the village never knew. They never knew that sometimes, at the far edge of the grazing fields, you could hear a faint thud beneath your feet, slow, deliberate, like someone pacing under the ground. They never knew that, on certain nights, the wind carried not just names but muffled knocking, as if from beneath the soil. They never knew that some of those who vanished were still there, somewhere in the dark beneath them, waiting for the door to open again. And they never knew that the whispers had not stopped. Tonight, the wind is restless. And if you stand very still, you will hear it calling your name,